This is Adam Price.
And Emily Jane Akery.
And you're listening to the Relative Rhythms podcast.
Today we're excited to introduce to you Spencer Inch.
Spencer is an incredibly versatile drummer and percussionist. He is an endorsing artist for Dream Cymbals and has played and toured with numerous indie bands including The Landing, Drew Angus, Sean Barna, and has even opened for and sat in with Counting Crows.
He has numerous album credits to his name, including being the drummer for Adam's 2018 album House Ghosts. He is currently on the North American tour of the Broadway musical Come From Away, which is my favorite show ever.
We talked to him about learning the Irish percussion instrument, the bodhran, for the show, what it's like being on the road with a musical, and pushing through imposter syndrome. We had a few sound issues on this interview, but the conversation was so good we wanted to share it.
We were so lucky to be able to snag Spencer for a quick call in the midst of his heavy tour schedule, and we know you will enjoy the conversation as much as we did.
Please welcome to the podcast, Spencer Inch. Spencer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited to have you here.
Yeah, super excited. So to start the conversation, we usually ask our guests how they first came to their art form. So when did you start playing percussion and where did it grow from there?
Sure. So I started playing drums when I was about 6 years old. The story in my household is that my dad always wanted to play drums, and it just so happened that at the time a neighbor was selling a little junior drum set, and we used my 6th birthday as an excuse to get a drum kit in the house.
Nice.
So that he could play, but I quickly said, no, this is my thing.
It was my birthday.
It's my birthday. You can't have it. No, but so I started taking lessons quickly after that with a drummer in the Connecticut area named John Catrone, who's sort of a jazz musician and theater musician as well in the area, and taught me right off the bat how to read sheet music, and that was sort of the core of his pedagogy was making sure that his drummers knew how to read charts, read music, and able to go forth from there. So I took lessons with him all throughout high school, and then went to college. I went to Penn State for classical percussion. And then, I knew from sort of a youngish age that I wanted to pursue playing musical theater and sort of in the Broadway path. So I knew that if I wanted to do that, I really needed to learn how to play other things other than just drum set. So I went to Penn State to sort of round out my musical experience with, marimba and timpani and all these other things that I had no clue how to play. I just showed up to band and kind of wung it.
Nice.
And so at Penn State, I studied classical percussion, and then I went to Miami for jazz for graduate school.
Oh, cool.
And then it was off to the races from there. I worked on cruise ships for a couple of years, and then just found myself gigging wherever I could find. Whoever came to me and said, "Hey, I got something for you," I was like, "Sure,
I will take the gig."
Yes, absolutely. Say yes to everything. That was my approach at first.
I'm curious how you knew that you wanted to sort of like go the pit musical theater route. Was there somebody in your life who had done that, who had kind of suggested it to you, or did you grow up going to see shows and thought like, "Oh, they have a pit. That's cool. I could do that."
Yeah. So it was my mom, mostly my mother, who, loved theater and, would take my brother and I when we were young to see Broadway shows.
Cool.
Growing up in Connecticut, it's right there. Very easy to get to. We had family in the city, so we would go in and see them and see shows. And I specifically always bring it back to this one memory of going to see The Lion King.
Nice.
On Broadway when it first opened in like the late 90s. And I was 10 maybe, and already had been playing drums for 4 years, and was sitting there watching this show with a story that I loved because I'm 10 and The Lion King's awesome. But also, I don't know if you know, but in The Lion King, there's 2 percussionists. There's 5 drummers in that show.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Which is incredible. But there are 2 of them who are visible in the balconies. They have their whole setup, like hand drums and gongs and all sorts of accessories. And you can watch them playing the show while it's happening, up in like 2 box seats or whatever they are, up on the sides. And I remember, always being conflicted about like, I want to watch the show, but like, look at that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I just remember wanting to do that.
That's awesome.
Very, very badly. And I we bought the CD and I listened to that way too much, and I could probably sing you every line and harmony and
Nice.
note in that
Nice.
cast album. But that was sort of an early influence of sort of something that I wanted to do and thought that I could, that I could conceivably do that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you play a lot of different percussion instruments, and you're on the national tour of Come From Away, you play bodhran. Am I saying that right?
Some people say bodhran. I say bodhran.
Bodhran.
I always liken it to Sauron if you watch Lord of the Rings. And I've actually named the bodhran in the show Sauron, the bodhran.
Nice.
Because it's a large drum, commands, it's the one ring that I play in the show.
Can you explain to us what that is and what tradition it comes from and kind of how you use it in the show?
Yeah. So the bodhran is a traditional Irish drum. It is something that, having learned recently, is actually not that old. You would think that it's sort of this, traditional instrument that goes back hundreds of years. The first real evidence of the bodhran existing in Ireland is late 1800s, early 1900s.
Oh, wow.
So it's and really what it evolved from was the Italian tambourine. Huh. That was imported. If you ever seen like Italian festival tambourines, they're these giant tambourines and people like shake it and play it with their whole hand. And those made their way up to the British Isles at some point. And the Irish sort of, they would take that instrument and then they would, not being able to afford it during the famine times, they would just use these trays that they made from like a wood hoop and skin, and they would be like it's like a sieve. They would use it to carry potatoes around or like serve food on the table, and it looked just like a bodhran. It was like a wooden hoop with a skin on one side, but upside down as like a tray, and they would just flip that over and kind of play it like a tambourine. And
wow.
Eventually it turned into what it is now, really starting to get popular in the 1960s. So a pretty new instrument, all things considered, but certainly irreplaceable in sort of the Irish and Celtic music traditions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
When did you pick that up?
I picked my first one up in it was about 2014. I was playing a cruise ship gig with a fiddle player from Prince Edward Island in Canada. Cool. This is something I just sort of happened upon in the cruise ship gig scene. I was playing in the show band, and we were on a ship that was going to the Caribbean from New York. And all of a sudden we got to September and the itinerary changed. They went from going to the Caribbean to going up to the East Coast of Canada. And they sent the reggae band home and brought on this fiddle trio from Prince Edward Island to fit the theme of the cruises going up to the East Coast of Canada and the Maritimes. And that was Cynthia McLeod and her trio. And I met her that year. We became friends. And every now and then I would go sit in with them while they were playing. And the next year, she was looking for different members for her trio for the same gig. And she called me up and she was like, hey, you know nothing about Celtic music, but you were kind of, you kind of knew what you were doing last year. So do you want to
nice.
play with me?
That's awesome.
And I had already had the cruise ship training, which
Sure.
is like a lot of safety nonsense. That's not nonsense. It's very important to know safety rules on the ship. But so she called me, and I played in her trio on that cruise ship gig every fall for the next like 3 or 4 years.
Wow, nice.
And she never let me play bodhran because I had never heard of it, and it's the goofiest thing to try to just pick up randomly. And she was very picky about her bodhran playing, so she just told me to play cajon. And
Really?
it was, and so that's what I did. But I bought a bodhran when I was in Halifax and just played it for fun. And that was pretty much my only usage of it. I mean, I was just having it at home and picking it up every couple months just to play around with for fun.
Cool.
And eventually I got, pretty comfortable with it, relatively speaking. And lo and behold, now I'm a professional bodhran player, quote unquote,
on the best show in the world right now. So can you talk, just because I am a super fan, can you talk about how your process of getting into Come From Away and the tour, and your experience as like an actor musician on stage? I mean, you kind of got your dream in a way. People can see you in this show, which is similarly to how you could see the Lion King, percussionist, which is super cool. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's cool. I hadn't thought of it that way, but maybe there's a kid out there somewhere who's watching me play and now wants to be a bodhran player. That's great. Yes, more of them. So I saw the show in maybe 2019, before the pandemic. I absolutely loved it. I had reached out at the time to Romano, who was the bodhran player on Broadway. I wanted to, not even for the purpose of playing in the show, I just wanted to, I knew that, there's a bodhran player in New York right now, a authentic Canadian bodhran player. And I wanted to take lessons with him.
Cool.
So I reached out. We met once. It never actually panned out that I was able to take lessons with him, but it just sort of reignited the spark for me of the bodhran and wanting to get better at it and learn more about it. So fast forward, this is now the spring of 2023, and I've just moved out of New York City and sort of taking a break from city life. And I get a text message out of the blue from a friend in Connecticut who says, "Hey, I was just contacted by this contractor who's looking for a percussionist for this Broadway show going on tour. They're looking for a percussionist. Are you interested?" And I was like, okay, that's not a lot of information, but
why not?
Absolutely. I would, I
Take
kind
the
of
gig.
like the idea of a tour. So then, he passes my information along. I get an email from the contractor saying, "We are seeking the bodhran player for Come From Away." And I was like, okay, let's do this.
That's
So
awesome.
immediately I pull the bodhran off the shelf and just spend hours practicing that goofy motion. And we have a Zoom meeting on a Friday, and he's just trying to get a sense for like what I've done and what my history is, how familiar I am with the show and the bodhran and all that. And I tell him that my bodhran is passable. It's not great, but I can play it and I'm comfortable with it. But I am by no means an expert. I really don't know a lot about Celtic music. I don't come from that tradition initially. But he said, you'll figure it out. You'll be fine. He said, you'll be fine.
It's passable.
Wow.
It's passable.
So he sends me the music, and I have to make an audition tape.
Right.
And he says, take a couple of days, learn the music, make a tape, and then we'll get back to you. So I did literally nothing but play the bodhran for about 5 days.
Wow.
I wake up, play the bodhran, eat, play the
Nice.
bodhran, just to get the motion down. I mean, the style of playing the bodhran does not translate from other drumming at all. It is a completely different motion. So I had to get comfortable with it over a few days, and I made a tape. And about 2 weeks later, I got the offer.
Wow,
that's awesome. That is awesome.
It was just word of mouth, and I was lucky enough that somebody in my life knew that I owned a bodhran and kind of played it sometimes.
that's wild,
That's
man.
awesome. Nice.
So,
Nice.
but needless to say, since then I've really dived into the bodhran a lot, and I love the tradition. I love the instrument, and I'm doing not much else these days. So
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
how is your learning process as like picking it up like fairly recently? And you said you never got a lesson with that guy on Broadway. Did you find other people to take lessons with, or did you just go on YouTube, or like how did you learn that?
It was mostly the school of YouTube, where I learned a lot. Over the years, I had looked up a few videos, and I already knew a few accounts that seemed very knowledgeable and were easy to follow, easy to learn. I did reach out to a few people. I took a couple online lessons with a guy who's based in Alabama. Actually, his name is Andy Crosby. A fantastic percussionist and bodhran player, and he was a great teacher. I just did 2 45-minute sessions with him online that really helped me answer some questions that I had about, like, I've never done this in front of another human. Am I doing it right? And so he kind of like took a look, and he was like, yeah, adjust this a little bit and maybe try doing this instead. And, after that, it was kind of off to the races.
Wow.
But getting comfortable on it, it just took a lot of hours. It was a unfortunate but fortunate turn of events that the tour, because of union negotiations, was delayed by 3 months when we were supposed to start. So now I had 3 months to practice.
Yeah.
Essentially, where I would not have had that before. So it was a fortunate accident that the tour got delayed. And my practice regimen was maybe about an hour a day of like sort of conscious effort, looking up a video, looking up a certain technique, or practicing a certain rhythm, and then literally just binge watching television all day, sitting there doing this for hours.
Wow.
For hours, I just sat there mostly with just a practice pad or just on my arm, just with a tipper, and just going back and forth and like getting used to this motion and building up the little, musculature, the grip that I needed.
Wow.
Just the endurance.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I had 3 months of just binge watching Netflix and practicing the bodhran stroke. And then by the time I showed up to the first rehearsal in Savannah in October, I felt super comfortable. I was like, I feel like I've been playing this for years.
Awesome.
Wow.
So it was very lucky. And obviously, coming into this show, the show has a long history of, I'm sure they've had a lot of bodhran players, and I felt like, most of these people probably are actual bodhran players. They probably, know Celtic music, played it, grew up with it.
Right.
Who am I? This guy from Connecticut, drum kit player. I was really nervous for that first rehearsal. Especially, like you were saying at the beginning, Allie, how we were on stage.
Right, which I think is so cool. I am in love with the whole like actor musician kind of like phase that we've kind of come into. I love it. I just think it like brings so much more community to the set, to the stage, so the interactions are. It just feels more real. Like you're really involved in the community. So I love that. So yeah, I'd love to hear your experience with.
Yeah, well, at first I was incredibly nervous because you don't end up playing pit orchestras because you like being in the spotlight. but here I am holding this drum that I'm barely feeling comfortable on, feeling like a total imposter. But I felt, I had done enough work over the summer that I came to the first rehearsal ready to play the show. And then the experience of being on stage they just made it so easy for us and so comfortable. The cast was very welcoming. I'm sure they sort of got instruction from the director to, hey, like, play around with the musicians a little bit, like give them a high five or go chat with them, make them feel welcome. And thankfully we don't have any lines to learn. We don't actually say anything. We're just there and participating in the scene. But you said it exactly. It helps to foster a sense of community. I mean, we really feel like in this show that we're a part of the story, and that we get to help not only the people on stage, but everybody in the audience feel like they're just in this bar with us, hanging out, drinking whiskey, and sort of making these connections. In an otherwise pretty dark moment, in history. And that's, kind of the whole aspect of this show is it's like the best of humanity in one of the worst times in recent history.
Right.
Yeah. I think that right there is what makes it such a cool show. And I can't imagine it any other way. Like I can't picture it with, like, say, a traditional pit orchestra, because it takes everybody, right? It takes a community to, like, get through times like that. It takes you leaning on people that you might not otherwise talk to or see, right? And it really takes the whole community to come together. And I mean, that's what the whole show is about. And I feel like making that choice to bring the musicians on stage just amplifies that idea to a whole nother level.
Absolutely. It was something that they said, I know, to the cast in rehearsals before we were there, and then again to us while we were in tech rehearsals, that the whole message of this show is community and being a good neighbor, and looking past differences, and they implore us to do whatever we could to continue to get along with each other. Because they said, if you don't have chemistry on stage, or if you're mad at each other, the show doesn't work, because the audience will pick up on it right away.
You were talking about the experience of being on stage with almost as like a part of the cast. And that's really interesting to me. I've done a lot of ship work as well, and one of there's a lot I hated about it.
I'm sure that's another episode.
Another podcast.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One of the things that they would make the musicians do occasionally that I just hated was that during a lot of the bigger, like, production numbers, the bigger production shows with the singers and dancers and stuff, sometimes they would kind of make the musicians, like, go out on stage and do little stupid dance moves, or, like, do some horn flares or something like that. And I hated it so much because there's so many reasons why I hated it, but it felt more like the music doesn't matter. It's just for the flash. Or I have to memorize all this music, and I have to memorize this blocking and these silly choreography moves on top of my normal job, which is just playing good music and making sure my shit's together. Now I have to do all this other stuff. compounded by the fact that the singers and dancers were getting paid like 2 or 3 times what we were. And so I'm wondering if that's, I'm wondering how you feel about it. Obviously the music in Come From Away is 1,000 times better than like some random ship show, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how, like, do you, how do you feel in that setting? Do you ever feel like, why am I doing this? Why am I on stage kind of deal? Or have you like entered into like an actor headspace kind of, or?
Well, I mean, to answer the first part of that question, no, I never feel like it's asinine or fake or something that I'm being forced to do. It feels very natural, and especially having done some of those ship shows. I'm remembering one in particular that I had to attend. That was it. It was a tracked show. There was no live music being played, but there were 3 of us in the band that needed to be there to pretend to play instruments.
No.
Yep.
What?
This drove me insane.
Yep.
What?
It was a show. This was the most atrocious thing. It was a show called World Beat on one of the ships I worked on, and it was like a compilation of different world cultures in music and dance. And there was one section that was like the Spanish, and so it was like a flamenco number. And there was a big set, and it was like a set of like a facade of a castle, and there were 3 windows, and in one of those windows was a set of bongos that was like a grade school instrument, barely functioning, that I had to stand there in a sequined red vest pretending to play when there was no bongo in the track.
No.
I wasn't even playing along to bongo that
makes
existed.
it even better.
What?
It's not even in the track.
What?
Nice.
It was it was the most demeaning thing I think I've ever done in my life. But so coming from that, I absolutely feel your pain, Adam. This show is a complete 180 from that. We have so much fun on stage because they didn't give us choreography. They just gave us blocking. So like you have to kind of be in this area by this bar, and then you kind of walk over here, and then you go to, like for me, as a bodhran player, I go to the front of the stage and kneel for a little bit of it, and so like I'm kind of just front and center, and Claude the mayor comes up to me and he's kind of chatting. And he says some of his lines in front of me or something. But we were also given the freedom to act natural and to like play along and kind of do whatever movements we want. So I have one moment where I do a special handshake with one of the cast members that we figured out because
nice.
Cool.
At least in my head, canonically in the show, the character who I play that I invented, his name is Rory.
Love that.
he and her are like distant cousins. And she came to Gander. This is Janice, the reporter.
Oh yeah.
Janice Mosier. So maybe I'm Rory Mosier. We're like distant cousins, and she came to Gander, and I was like, "Oh, my cousin's here," and we have a handshake that we do.
So cool.
That's just for fun. And doing the same show so many times, my brain can sometimes be in a million places other than where I'm at. And no matter what I'm feeling, every time we get to part of the show where the band goes on stage, I get a jolt of energy, and I'm like sort of snapped out of whatever funk I was in, and I'm like alive again.
Wow.
So I'm grateful for that moment in the show. It breaks it up really, really nicely.
This is the Relative Rhythms podcast, and you're listening to our conversation with Spencer Inch. This podcast is a labor of love, and we are currently funded solely by our listeners. If you'd like to support our work, you can do so by joining our Patreon, where you can find extra content and listen to the full, uncut interviews. Go to patreon.com/relative rhythms to subscribe and support our work. You can also support us by following and leaving us a review wherever you are listening. And you can find us on all the socials at Relative Rhythms. Thanks for listening, and now back to our conversation with Spencer.
A lot of the conversations Adam and I have had, myself as a tap dancer and Adam as a musician, we've had very different experiences about coming together, not necessarily him and I, but with musicians or with dancers, and have had a variety of experiences with kind of interacting and performing. And I know sometimes Adam's felt, maybe Adam, you should talk about this, but I know sometimes Adam's felt like, oh, well, the dancer just comes in and doesn't really know the music and just picks her face or does a cool jump and gets all the applause. And meanwhile, I'm back here just they need me, but they don't maybe respect me, or he feels lesser than in some way in those experiences because the mutual respect hasn't been there. Do you ever feel like that's that way with the cast? You're just, I'm just coming on for this number. Or do you really feel like it's the mutual respect from the directors, from the top down? Do you feel like it's there across the board?
With this show, no. I certainly know what that experience is. I sort of had that before. This show, just because of the nature of the type of music that it is, and again, going back to the aspect of community, these actors really love the music, and they certainly know that they would not have the show that they do without us. Yeah. And I feel very fortunate to be a part of something that values us so highly. Come From Away is a unique show within the touring company that runs it, in that they hired a separate music contractor to fill our spots because it is so specialized that that they wanted somebody with expertise, and this contractor was the same one who I believe hired the musicians for the Broadway production.
Cool.
So he already had experience finding people, and from what I gather, sort of weeding them out by personality and vibe too. I mean, most of what I felt he was doing at our Zoom call was like, "Are you a chill?"
Yeah, just a vibe check.
Yeah, a vibe check, definitely. And I think that's part of the reason why we all get along so well.
It's so good. Gosh, it's so good. I mean, I feel like we can, as an audience, we can tell that, whether we subconsciously know that or not. It's so unique in that way, I think. I mean, there's shows that I love that are on and touring right now, but it's just super unique in that community kind of way that I love. So yeah, I could go on and on. I'll stop. Told you
Emily's
fangirling all over the place. It's such a good show. Anyway,
I'm so glad to hear. I mean, we love this show. We're so happy to be a part of it. And we not to brag, but we heard a lot that people really resonate with this show and with the message, and it's kind of unique amongst the Broadway repertoire.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm interested in what the charts look like. What is a chart for a bodhran look like? Is it just...
It is mostly slashes.
Gotcha.
I will
Just
I will
kind of
say
like make it up.
pretty much. It's a very bare bones kind of sheet music. Sometimes I have just the rhythm, the basic rhythm outlined. No real indication of like what I should be doing with the pitch or the articulation or there's dynamics written in that's sort of band wide. Everybody, it's a very dynamic show. A lot of it functions kind of like a film score, so there's like very specific crescendos, decrescendos, things like that we need to follow to a T. So that's all written in, but in terms of the bodhran itself, it's like usually either just one line and a rhythm written out, and then repeat marks or just slashes, like a group.
Yeah.
A lot of what I'm doing, I figured out by listening to the cast recording and then just figuring out interpretations of my own.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting to me because it could sound so different then, like show to show or player to player, right? Like if I went to see it with a different bodhran player, it might sound different.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. There's not a lot of indication of how it should go in the part. I think it's up to a lot up to interpretation by anyone who plays it. I think they certainly have certain things that depending on who the music director is and this music supervisor, they'll try to rein you in. But I pretty much had free reign. I mean,
wow.
If I knew as much about the bodhran as I did coming into it, the other people certainly had no idea what to say. Right. So there's like, as long as there's a bodhran in your hand and a stick and you're hitting it, do whatever you want.
Oh my God.
Show to show, I mostly try to play the same thing, with like little improvisation here and there, just to keep it interesting. But yeah, I mean, like the UK touring company just opened recently. I'm sure their bodhran player, she probably plays it totally differently than I do, and the guy who was on tour before me, it was he did his own thing too.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, maybe you could give us, because I was surprised how much of a difference it could sound. Maybe you want to give us a little demonstration.
I can give you a little bodhran primer. Oh,
awesome.
I happen to have a drum right here. How convenient.
Well, so convenient.
Yeah. So this is a bodhran. It is a hoop and a head. And that's basically it. Now, with modern technology, we have like tuning pegs so that I can tune it up or down, and then put tape on the head of some of them to just dampen the overtones and make it a little more precise. One hand holds the tipper. I'm a lefty, so I'll hold it in my left hand, and the other hand is inside the drum, putting pressure on the head in different places in order to change the pitch.
Cool.
So like an open, let's see. This is like the lowest tone of the drum. And if I were to start the show.
Yes. Northeast style.
You go ahead.
No. I'll mess it up.
Go ahead.
It's so good though. You didn't believe that I was a super fan. I am a super fan.
Incredible. I love it. It very comfortable for me. I'm used to hearing that line right off the bat. So the show starts with that. It's just like an open tone. My hand's all the way up here. It's not muting the skin at all. And then if I put a little more pressure on, it starts to like, crisp up a little bit. The more I put pressure on, you can see kind of here, like my hand, like going, like actually pushing the head out.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Ooh.
So there's a lot of pitch range that if I tilt this down a little bit, maybe you can see better, like from the bottom.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
That's so cool.
That's a huge range. That's a huge pitch range.
It's massive. Yeah.
Yeah.
This drum, it's small, but the head is really flexible, so I can really like bend it, a lot. And this is a different kind of tipper. So it is a huge range of expression that it's capable of. We have a lot of fun pre-show, because we play the show on in-ears, so we can hear each other in our ears, and before they pump the sound out into the audience, we can still hear each other pre-show, and we're always like goofing around and playing various things. And if somebody's playing something and there's a melody to it, I'll try to learn the melody in the bodhran.
Nice. Nice.
That's the Rugrats theme for anybody who was asking.
Awesome.
So it's cool. I mean, I'm obsessed now, and the world of the
no going
bodhran,
back.
like this is I own two. This is my other one, a little bigger, also taped, but sort of this is a bit of more traditional sound.
Cool.
And there's different styles of playing. There's the more traditional carry style that they call, where you hit with both ends of the stick. So I'm hitting 1, 2, 3 to get a triplet. And then there's the more modern, what they call top end, which is I only play with this side.
Do they mic you when you go out on stage? Do you have like a wireless attached to you somehow, or like?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have when I go on stage, I'll have two packs on me. I'll have the pack for my in-ears, which I'm wearing under my costume.
Right.
And then there will be a wireless pack in the bodhran as well for the mic. It's like a little lavalier mic that they stick on the front.
Okay.
So that just stays on the bodhran. That's on there the whole time. So I can kind of get up and go wherever I want, and it'll still pick it up.
Cool.
And then I play a few other little tchotchkes back at my chair. Like I play a djembe and an udu and a couple shakers.
And is there a drum set in the show as well? Or no? There is. Yeah.
There is. Yeah. So I'm playing the percussion book.
Gotcha.
And there is another guy playing the drum set book.
Gotcha.
Which is mostly drum set, also like a little bit of triangle and finger cymbal and djembe and cajon, things like that. So some accessories, but mostly drum set.
Cool. And so who's on tour now that you're home? Like, do you have a sub?
No, the show is just off.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It is a layoff week where the show just takes a break and everybody goes home, decompresses,
get some sleep,
goes to see the dentist, to see the doctor.
Yeah.
It's good. All the fun things.
All the things.
Yeah.
So how long is your contract for? Is it just as long as you want?
My contract goes up until August.
Okay.
But the tour is being booked for a second year.
Okay.
Okay.
I currently am thinking about staying on for a second year.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because I don't have an apartment at the moment. I don't really have a lot going on at home. I don't have a car because it got stolen
What?
before I went on the road. That's a fun bit of news. I was on another short tour, a singer-songwriter tour with a buddy of mine, and we were playing in DC. And after the gig, I'm loading out my drums, and I pull the car around to the front of the venue. This is like a main strip in DC. A lot of people, I wouldn't have suspected anything to happen. That's my naive Connecticut self coming out. So I left the key in the ignition. I just put I put the hazard flashers on and I put it in park. And we go and we're getting ready to load the drums in, and a minivan pulls over across the street, and some guy gets out of the minivan, runs into my driver's seat, and driver's door open, rear hatch open, just guns it down the road.
Oh my gosh!
Oh
What?
my
You were
God.
standing right there watching him drive
I was
away with your
standing
car.
right there.
What?
I went around. Before he like got it into drive. I like ran around to the driver's side. I don't know what I was gonna do.
Yeah, I was gonna
I
say,
was
that's probably not a great
way
idea
bigger
there.
than me.
Yeah.
Not a great idea, but I like kind of tugged on his arm, being like, "Hey, get out of my car!"
What the?
And then he just drives
my
away.
gosh.
So
Oh
I
my
kind of
goodness.
was just standing there in the middle of the road in DC, being like,
Did that just happen?
Did you guys saw that, right?
Oh man!
Wow.
So that was wild. Thankfully, my drums were not in the car.
I was going to say, what did you... Yeah.
I did lose a glockenspiel that I had. It was like a 1920s like travel
man.
glockenspiel that I love. But so here I am. No apartment, no car. I get offered to go on a tour. I'm like, might as well do it.
Might as well, yeah. They fly you everywhere, right?
Most bus.
A bus.
Yeah.
I was looking at your tour schedule, and it's not in a straight line at all. It's like
absolutely
like Washington, Texas, like New York is like all like, and it's not there. It doesn't look like they're short drives.
No, they're certainly not short drives. Typical day will look like we get up at 8. You have to load your luggage on the bus by 8:30, and then 8:30 the bus rolls out. We have maybe 2 or 3 stops throughout the day. We get to the hotel around 3 or 3:30, and then we have to get back on the bus around 5 to get to the theater to do the show. And so we have to set it up, sound check. Then we have about a half an hour break before the show starts. And then once the show's done, if it's a one-nighter, we tear it all down again, pack everything up, and then get back on a bus. We're back in the hotel by 10. Thankfully, because it's a short show, it's only an hour, 40 minutes. So, if this were Les Mis, it'd be a lot worse.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
Shout out to my friends on the Les Mis tour. I love you. No, but they're in week-long stays. They're fine.
Wow.
And then we, get up and do it all over again the next day. So it can be a lot of time on the bus.
Yeah.
But it makes it extra special when we do get to sit somewhere for a week or longer.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of last fall, we had a week in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is a beautiful city.
Nice.
A week in London, Ontario, and then 2 weeks in Anchorage, Alaska, which they flew
cool.
us. They flew us up there. So we do get some cool experiences like that, and every now and then they'll have to fly us to get. We were in McAllen, Texas, and then had to be in Pueblo, Colorado the next day. So they obviously they flew everybody there. But yeah.
How do you?
That's why they call it a bus and truck tour.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with how do you maintain your physical and mental health on the road when you're like so back to back like that?
It's a challenge for sure. It just takes a bit of willpower. I usually dedicate the time when I get home, when I get to the hotel, to then have to get back on the bus to go to the theater, which is from 3 to 5 p.m. I usually dedicate that to exercise. I do some yoga, or I go to the hotel gym. And then I try to eat, like a nice high protein, low processed food dinner after that. And then, got to go to the show.
Wow.
So there's not a lot of time off or like time by yourself.
Right.
So whenever we do get those moments, you have to make use of it well.
Yeah.
If I'm going to get any practice time in on the bodhran, I have to do it, sort of in that time frame as well. Because at night in the hotel, it's like I can't be playing a drum in a hotel room at 11 o'clock at night.
Or on
not
the
that I
bus.
haven't. If I know who I'm sleeping next to,
exactly.
In the rooms, and they don't mind, then I'll do it. But yeah, it can be tough. I think we're very lucky in the band that we have a group of people that we love hanging out with, and we all get along really well.
Nice.
That certainly
that helps.
You know,
yeah.
we're always sort of coordinating, like, has anybody found a place to eat on this lunch stop? Or, is anybody, I saw this cool thing that I kind of want to do around town. And if we leave, if we get an Uber from the hotel when we get there, we can see it before we have to go to the show. And there's,
Right.
Some coordination
Nice.
like that. So there are ways.
I'm curious, this is a little bit off of the tour topic, but I'm curious. I know you had said that you felt like coming in as not a bodhran player, traditionally speaking, a little bit of like imposter syndrome. So I'm wondering, I think that's something that we can all, especially as artists, especially as people who are trying to maybe collaborate within different art forms or, put themselves out there as an artist, can be really hard to do. So if you have any wisdom or like, just do it, or any kind of thoughts about how you were able to kind of get over that imposter syndrome to succeed in this role.
Yeah, I think there's certainly something to the mentality of just do it. It is possibly one of the most universal experiences that I can think of. The imposter syndrome, the feeling that like, who am I to be doing this right now? Like, what do I have to offer? Why do I deserve to be in this spot? And I think I've just had enough experiences of talking to my idols or my mentors where they said the exact same thing. And, from both when they were my age and even from like where they're at, if they're older, still experiencing that. I think just understanding that's just kind of a universal human trait. It has been helpful to me. I certainly think a certain amount of prep work and work helps a lot. I spent a lot of time over the summer working on the bodhran so that I would know a little bit when I came in and feel confident about the little that I did know. And also just being honest about what you don't know too. It's like the worst trouble I've ever gotten myself into is when I sort of pretended to know what I didn't know. And doesn't
always work out.
It doesn't always work out. Yeah. Sometimes you can fake it till you make it, but yeah, I think just as human beings, there's got to be some evolutionary reason why we all feel that way, and some internal biochemical explanation for it. I don't really know what that is, but I just kind of take solace in the fact that it is so common, and most people are worried enough about their own thing to really like be judging you with so much intensity. Obviously you run into a lot of judgmental people, but everybody has their own blockages and things to work on that like to understand that you're not being singled out.
Right. Yeah.
It's just kind of just keep working and
keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, Spencer, thank you so much for sharing all your come from away stories with me.
Absolutely.
and playing for us and everything. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was a blast. Thank you for having me on.
You've been listening to our conversation with Spencer Inch. You can learn more about Spencer on his website, spencerinch.com, and if you'd like to see him in action on the bodhran, he's currently on the North American tour of Come From Away. See if they're passing through your town. You will not regret it. It is such an amazing show.
If you liked our conversation today, please consider following and leaving a rating or review wherever you are listening. And if you'd like to support our work, you can do so on our Patreon, where we catalog our full, uncut interviews, complete with awkward pauses and inappropriate road stories.
Our opening theme, For the Love of It, was composed by Adam. Our mid-roll music today was Rotten Grapes, featuring Spencer on drums. And our outro music is Mzungu, also featuring Spencer, both off of the Adam Price Group's album House Ghosts.
Please follow us on all the socials at Relative Rhythms, and feel free to send us a message through our website, relativerhythms.com.
We'll leave you today with Spencer's Rhythms. Stay tuned to the end to hear Spencer's drum battle against percussionist Jeff Hatcher on djembe. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next episode. Bye!